Jesus gives us a solution in Matthew chapter 6 on dealing with worry. Worry is a natural occurrence. It is part of being human. Worry is something that we just will do. But worry can also become a trap. It can become something that where we just become fearful over something that potentially could happen, something that looks imminent, and with that fear do the wrong thing. But let's look in Matthew chapter 6. We go to Matthew chapter 6, and we will begin in verse 25. Verse 25. Therefore I say to you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat, or wait a minute, I want to go to earlier. Let's go to verse 24. Verse 24 is where I want to start. No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will be loyal to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. All right, let's define mammon first off, so that we understand what that even means. Mammon does mean material wealth. It does mean possessions. And it is basically materialism. And materialism means a desire for the things that are material. Now, one can live in the middle of the desert and be surrounded by just sand. That's it. Just surrounded by sand and still be a materialist. But we live in a different place. We live surrounded by all kinds of things, and I do mean things, and gadgets, and stuff that can fascinate us, and stuff that can get our attention, and stuff that we can just think that we're dependent upon. Those things can gather our attention, and that is all of materialism. And while someone can be in the desert and be a materialist, it's a whole lot easier being here and being a materialist. Being someone who's just concerned about the things of this earth. But what Christ says, and this is our first point for today, is that materialism does not serve Christ. It's the opposite of it. It's the opposite of spiritual. There is no place for it because it will destroy your relationship with Christ. That's what it will do. In Christ, well, your love for Christ, your relationship with Christ can be dominated by materialism. And it just take over. It can. And serving mammon is that of just serving the things that are of this material realm. And as Christ is going to point out, that's more than what you may understand. More than what you may understand it to be. Because while we can all agree that money can control people, that mammon can control people, all this can be, and the love of money is the root of all evil, we can understand that. But quite often we can see it in others and have an idea of what that means without looking at our own life. Sometimes we can think of those who are taken by mammon as being criminals, willing to steal and to kill and the like. We can think of it as someone like that they are serving mammon. Or we can think of it as people who are in fact greedy, that they are just greedy people and they're taken by mammon, they're taken by prosperity. But Christ actually is going to say something very different in this. While all that is wrong, He's actually going to say something very different. And let's just look at what He says in verse 24 again. No one can serve two masters. This is either or. It's not also and. It's not both and. It is either or. Either you serve this one or you serve that one. It's one or the other. You cannot serve both at the same time. Christ will not let you do that, and materialism won't let you do that either. The masters will not let you do that. Now, notice his wording in this, because it is interesting to note his wording. No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else, here's the other option, he'll be loyal to the one and despise the other. He's saying the same thing. He's saying the same thing. You love this one, you will not love this one. You're loyal to this one, you will not be loyal to this one. You choose who your master is going to be. But materialism is going to let you down. You put your trust in that. You can put your trust in men. You put your trust in money and prosperity. Anything of this world, you put your trust in that, it's going to ultimately let you down. It is, you can imagine the best, as we all can, dream the best as we all can, but it's just not going to turn out right. It's not going to turn out the way we imagined, ever. Now, here he is telling us that we must choose. We're going to have to choose, and Christ is not going to share your heart with anything else. He's not going to share it with anything else. Now, the next point of this is that certainty and trust, and we've already made mention of this, in material wealth is going to be foolish. That's just an extremely foolish thing to do. Now, we go from this point, let's go to Luke chapter 12. And it's all part of this. Luke chapter 12. He gives a parable. And we begin in verse 13. And note how this parable is, the context in which this parable is being told, and the request that's made, and then Jesus using this parable, because the man saying this isn't asking for anything other than just having my brother share the inheritance. That's what he's asking. Which, is that a wicked thing? That he's asking for part of the inheritance. Is that a wicked thing? He's not breaking any law, and it's not morally wrong to ask for that either. But notice what Jesus says. Now, we go to verse 13. Then one from the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Tell him. First off, that's not even his job to do that. You don't go to Christ and have him solve a problem that you have with your brother. Okay? I want you to be the one judging this and tell my brother to do what he should be doing, or what I want him to do. Christ isn't going to get involved in that. He's not going to get involved in that whatsoever. This is a trivial matter, and as far as things are concerned, it's maybe not to this man, but notice what Jesus said. But he said to him, "Man, who made me a judge or an arbiter over you?" Is that my jurisdiction? Is that what I'm supposed to be doing? Who made me this judge over what takes place between you and your brother? If he rightfully has it, he rightfully has it. Okay? Now, he says this, and he said this to them, "Take heed and beware of covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of the things he possesses." All right? If your life only consists of the things you possess, your life is empty. You just need to know that. Your life is absolutely empty. Just a few months ago, Catrice and I went into a museum. I don't think I ever told you about this particular museum. I talked about the British Museum, but this is a different one. And basically what it was what had been collected by Queen Victoria and her husband Albert. It was things that they had collected. And there were things from all over the earth, and there were amazing things, beautiful things, extraordinary objects. There is no doubt about that. But with all of that museum, the things collected there, while there is a beauty to it, while there is an astonishing skill that went into the various things that are in there, it's kind of random items that were through there. if that's all their life consisted of, and I can't say that it was, if that's all their life consisted of, then it's a nothing. It's a nothing, including the museum. It's a nothing. If that's all your life is, it comes to zero. Because Christ says your life does not consist of the things that you possess. Now, there was an old bumper sticker, I haven't seen it in years and years, and it's just a dumb idea, but it was some of the folks would remember it. It's the one who dies with the most toys wins. Okay, as some of you remember that. That's just dumb. That's just dumb. Actually, it would be the one who dies with the most toys is still dead. Okay, is still dead. The one who dies with the most toys lost the most toys in the end. That's what it comes down to. Because it doesn't go with them, and you are not being judged by the amount of wealth you can possess on this earth. Because all we have to do is look at Jesus. Jesus, from a financial standpoint, was a financial failure. From a financial standpoint, he had pretty much, they were dividing up his last possessions at the base of the cross. He didn't have a lot. He did not have a lot. And for those that might have benefited from his death, and I do mean from physical possessions, not from not from salvation, but from physical possessions, they wouldn't have gained a lot physically by anything that he had. They would not have gained much of anything. But what Jesus says in all this is extremely important. Extremely important, because our life does not consist in the abundance of things. Because there will always be someone who has more than me. Always. And whoever it is today, and I can't keep up with it, whoever it is today that happens to be the wealthiest person on the earth, they are not more pleasing to God simply because they have more than the rest of us. If they're pleasing to God at all, now I wouldn't know that, but if they're pleasing to God at all, it's not because of what they possess. That would not be it. And notice what he said concerning covetousness. Covetousness can take over someone of where they're desiring more and more and more and more. And it does not end. It doesn't end. And someone can always think they need more. You can always get in that trap, that you need more. When the fact of the matter is, as he's going to state, fact of the matter is, God is going to give us everything we need, not everything we want. Because we can want an awful lot and never stop wanting. And what do you get? You get basically a spoiled child is what you get. In the end, you don't get anybody that has grown. You don't have anybody that's developed in the right way, but actually developed in the worst sort of way. But covetousness must be avoided. Beware of covetousness, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of the things he possesses. As Solomon writes in the book of Ecclesiastes, vanity of vanities, everything is vanity. All is vanity. And he speaks of various things that he had applied his life to. And that acquiring of wealth, or that building beautiful things, buildings, projects of gardens and the like, that all that beauty comes to nothing. While it is nice to look at, it doesn't get you any closer to God, and it does not bring about the purpose of your life. Not even close. Now, we go to verse 16. Then he spoke a parable to them, saying, now it's still under this whole idea of what this man demanded from Christ. Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me. Once again, what he's asking for is not illegal. It's not immoral. But Christ uses it as a way of showing that of covetousness, you need to be aware of that and stay away from it. That just because someone, if his brother, and this would be a big if his brother had in fact taken it and he shouldn't have taken it, and we don't know. But if that were the case, I rather doubt it, but if that were the case, it would be better for this man to just say, okay, you took it, it's yours. I'm not going to be bothered with it. I'm not going to break out in a sweat over it. I'm not going to lose a night of sleep over it. You have it. I'm okay. I'm still breathing. I'll still live tomorrow. I'll be okay. If you stole it, which once again, I can't say that the man did, but if you stole it, all right, that's you having to deal with it, not me. That's your doing, not my doing. And I'll be okay. I'll be okay in all of this. Now, verse 16, then he spoke a parable to them, saying, the ground of a certain rich man yielded plentifully. And he thought within himself, saying, what shall I do, since I have no room to store my crops? That's a good problem to have from a matter of wealth and prosperity, and things are looking as good as they possibly could. Here is I have no room to store my crops. It's so bountiful, so much of it. So he said, here's making plans. I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build greater, and there I will store all my goods, all my crops and my goods. So he's making a plan. What he currently has won't hold it. Going to tear it down, build bigger ones. There it's going to be stored away. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have many goods laid up for many years. Take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry. All right? It seems like all of his problems are solved by this crop, by what he has, by wealth, that all of his problems have been solved. His greatest problem is how to store all the wealth he's got. That's his greatest problem. And he's going to tear down the barn, build bigger ones, and now he can just take his ease, and that there's no problem whatsoever. All is going to be just the sunny side of the street from now on. That's all it's going to be. Verse 20, but God said to him, fool, this night your soul will be required of you. Then whose will those things be which you have provided? All right, the one who dies with the most toys loses the most toys. That's what it comes down to. That's all it is. That's all it is. And here is this man who has all these crops. He's trying to resolve what he's going to do, which it's just everything looks good. And God tells him, all right, tonight, your soul's required. Tonight, in a heartbeat, they're no longer yours. They are no longer yours. Now who does it go to? So is he who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. Now, this world has a lot of things to offer, a lot of things, but none of them are anywhere close to what God has to give. Not even close. Everything here is just a short span of time, and it's done. What have you actually gained in the end? Nothing. You've lost everything. You've lost everything. What's the profit if a man trades his soul for the world? What's the profit? There is none. What has he gained? He's gained nothing. Where Christ is saying you can have the entire world, if that were even possible, which I don't, but hypothetically, Even if you were offered the entire world, or you own the entire world but lost your soul, that's a bad deal. That's an extremely bad deal. Now let's go back to Matthew chapter 6. And we look at verse 25, and we have a conclusion in all this. A conclusion concerning that of having the two masters, that of God or of material wealth, of mammon. Therefore I say to you, verse 25, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, nor about your body, what you will put on. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? Now, notice what he's saying. Just a few minutes ago, we said concerning that of, we can look at like the term mammon and the love for such things as someone who is criminal does that. Yeah, they do. Someone who is greedy for things, that's what they do. Yes, they do. But it's not limited to that group. It's not limited there. This can be everybody. And you're not necessarily greedy, and you're not necessarily criminal. But what you're doing is still not the best thing to do. Because he says, do not worry about your life. Or the idea that I am going to work my hardest to prolong my life regardless of what it takes, that's a bad idea. Because what that would entail, regardless of the cost, what that would entail is tossing away faith, tossing away God. I'm going to, just for the sake of prolonging my life, I will do whatever it takes for today. Whatever it takes. And that leads to all kinds of evil. Anything that it takes to protect my life today, regardless of the cost, regardless of what I might need to do. While it may look practical from a worldly standpoint, it may look like something that is extremely pragmatic. Well, practicality and pragmatism can take us into a very dark corner. It can take us into taking other people's lives for the sake of our own, or more to the point in all this, of being overwhelmed by the things of this world, by the promises of this world, the lures of it, and we toss Christ away. And we become a slave to mammon. We become that slave. Now, this includes life. Don't worry about what you will eat or what you will drink or about your body. And then he asks this question. This is in this conclusion, he does ask a question: is not life more than food, and the body more than clothing? Why would he say that? Because you didn't supply your life, you didn't create your soul, nor did you create your body. It's God that did that. God did that. He supplied those things. Can He not supply what is needed now for us? You didn't have to work for those things. You did nothing for that. God supplied that. And He's going to supply the rest as well. Just have faith in Him. Just have faith in Him. And as we often mention, it's easy to look at someone in the Bible or someone else that we know in life here. We can look at them and see their problems and give them solutions. I mean, that's easy to do. But when it comes to ourselves, sometimes we can be absolutely blind about such things. We can see it concerning others, but we can't see it in our own life. We can't see it. Years ago, can't explain why I did it. I took a course in mountaineering. I don't know, like I said, it just seemed fun, so I did. That was years and years ago in my misspent youth, you might say. But there was, in the final exam, we had to climb up a cliff. It's high. All right, you're secured, but you have to climb up a cliff. And when you're down on the ground looking at people going up the cliff, because we're going up one by one, there came a point where everyone paused. Everyone had to stop because the next step wasn't obvious. It looked like you had come to a point where you couldn't go any further. Now, on the ground, at a distance, you could see it. On the ground, you could see it. But when you're this close to the rock, you can't see it. You can't see it at all. But on the ground, everybody would just call it, it's to your left. Just go left. And they're looking at their left and just not seeing it. Just can't see it. I'm assure you it is to the left. Just go that direction. And eventually they would give it a try. And oh yeah, and so they just easily go up the cliffside. And they're up. But when you're there, it's different. When it's your eyes, when you get to that spot, it's very different. That you now see what the others saw and not what everyone down there sees. You only see the rock in front of you, and you have no place to put your hands. You're standing on what seems to be the last place you could stand. You're right there. Now, the same thing is true concerning life itself, of where we can look at somebody else and we can see the ease at which this is done. The ease that all, because we don't have any emotion in it, we're not in that situation, we are removed from it. This is what you need to do. But in that situation, suddenly it's different. It applied to them, sure, but me, now it's serious. Why? Because I'm involved in it now. I've got something in the game. I'm emotionally tied to it. Everything is there. And it's something that while watching them, I wasn't worried one bit watching them. But with me, now I'm worried. Now it hits home and it hits hard. Now, he says, don't worry about these things. Don't worry about your life. Don't worry about the various things, because God is going to take care of you. But this doesn't mean you do nothing, because He's going to tell us there's something to be done. This doesn't mean do nothing, but something must be done. Now, He's going to give these things that are obvious in nature. And He's going to give us more than one. Look at the birds of the air. For they neither sow nor reap nor gather into barns, yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not of more value than they? So here's just a fact from nature. Just learn from nature. All right, birds, they're just being birds. All right, they don't have farms. They don't go, developing systems where they can process food. They don't do any of those things, yet God feeds them. Which of you, by worrying, can add 1 cubit to his stature? So this is another thing concerning nature. And here's a question. All right, can you, by worrying, add a cubit to your stature? So he's saying, worrying does nothing. Worrying does not help you in the least. It does nothing. You can't add even to yourself. One cubit is what he says. And you can't add an inch either by worrying. So why do you worry about clothing? Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither toil nor spin. So here he's going back to another thing from nature. And yet I say to you that even Solomon in all his glory was not arrayed as one of these. Now if God so clothed the grass of the field, which today is and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, will He not much more clothe you, O you of little faith? Will He? Look at what he's saying. He's bringing these things out of nature. Doesn't God have a greater concern for you? You're made in the image of God. Grass of the field is not. That lily of the field is not made in the image of God. And it's not going to be long till that's all cut down and it's gone, to be seen no more. Does He not have a greater interest in you? Well, He does. And of course, that's a rhetorical question. He doesn't expect them to answer it, that everyone would understand, yes, He does have this. Now, let's talk about worry versus concern for a moment, because there is a distinction between it. Worry, first off, as we said, does nothing, but it does create more worry. It does take us down that road of fear, of where Satan can take advantage of that. This sort of worry, and from the Greek in this, is anxiety. It's to be anxious about something and to, in fact, meditate on that thing. Which means what? It means it has taken you. It has overtaken you. It occupies your mind, and you can drown in it. You can become so occupied with it that you can't think straight. You cannot, and you just lose all faith in God altogether. And you can despair in it, and you can be dominated by it, which is the major point in this, is that you can be dominated by it. Now, there is a difference between worry and concern, because something can be concerning, but we don't reach into this level of anxiety and worry and being domineered by whatever happened. We can be concerned with it, and we can see where, yes, Jesus was concerned about certain things. But He still had faith in God. Jesus was concerned about certain things. Jesus on the Mount of Olives, we can go to Luke chapter 22 in this one. Luke chapter 22, and see where He is on the Mount of Olives, and He is praying fervently, and that He is under a great amount of distress, under a great amount of anguish, and He is sweating like great drops of blood. He is sweating terribly because of the anguish and the pain and knowing what is about to happen. Now, we can just turn to this and see, yes, you know what? If trials had no emotional component to it, they wouldn't be trials. Not at all. If trials didn't have some kind of difficulty to it, if they were in fact just easy things to go through, then it's not a trial. There's nothing being developed. So even with Christ in the garden, we can see where He is bothered by what is about to take place, but He is able to pray. He does pray, if this cup can pass from me. If. But He says, nevertheless, your will is done. Nevertheless. Now, what we can take from this is, number one, that there's an emotional part of a trial. That it's going to take us. But we don't let it dominate. It can take us, but we don't let it dominate. Number two, because we can see that even with Christ. But number two, what does Christ do? First off, He does have men with Him there, as at least with them being in proximity of Him. Yes, they were falling asleep, but even in proximity of Him, He could gain some strength by it. Some strength that He is doing this for the love of mankind, including them, including Peter and John, including them, and can gain support by that. But also, what is He doing? He's not wringing His hands and worrying. He's praying. Now, that He's still in anguish, and He's praying in anguish. Is the Father hearing Him? Yes. Does He? Why is He in this emotional state? Because what's about to happen to Him is going to be excruciating, and it's going to be absolutely it's meant to put him to shame and to humiliate him and to break his spirit and his soul and everything about him. That's what it's intended to do. That's what the Romans intend. That's what those such as Herod intends. That's exactly what the Sanhedrin intends. That's what Satan intends. All of them are in agreement with that. And Christ knows what it means. But being in anguish, does that mean he has a lack of faith? No, it doesn't mean that at all. Because he's praying to God. And he is facing a terrible point. Matter of fact, it is the worst point that he's going to have to face. And he does it head on. And once he has prayed, and he does more than once, he's praying. And once that mob comes to get him, we see a different demeanor. He's not worrying about it anymore. It's a different demeanor of this is the direction that must be taken. It is God's will, and that's what we're doing. That is what we're doing. Now, we go to verse 31. Verse 31. Therefore, do not worry, saying, what shall we eat, or what shall we drink, or what shall we wear? Now, that's not saying it's wrong to plan. It's not saying that at all. But what's the word? Worry. That's the word. There's nothing wrong with planning out, because if a farmer who is planting seeds, or he's planning out, he's planning things out. It's not that he's overtaken by worry and that what are we going to eat, what are we going to drink, what are we going to wear. It's none of that. He is doing what he knows he needs to do so that he can eat later, and that this is his livelihood. But it's a matter of being overtaken by the worry of it. Nothing wrong with planning, but it's letting this dominate you, where it's just overtaken you in this. Then he says this in verse 32, for after all these things the Gentiles seek. Now he is speaking to Jews. And he's talking about the Gentiles, well, they don't believe in God. Or if they do, he's mixed in with all their other things that they believe in. But they're pagans. And they're extremely worldly. They are, some of them taken over by hedonism, some taken over by secularism, but they are basically an ungodly sort. Basically. All right? This is what the Gentiles seek. This is what your average person in the world seeks. Don't worry about those things. For your heavenly Father knows that you need all these things. He knows you need it. You can still pray, obviously, but He knows you need this, and He will supply. Now, if we just go look here in what Christ has given us in the Sermon on the Mount, we can see several times where Jesus is given instructions. Matter of fact, the whole thing is instructions. We just go back to chapter 7, so Matthew chapter 7. And we just look at verse 29. If your right eye causes you to sin, pluck it out and cast it from you. For it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and cast it from you. For it is more profitable for you that one of your members perish than for your whole body to be cast into hell. What is he saying in that? That he's not telling us to dismember ourselves because we sin, but whatever is causing us to sin, we've got to remove ourselves from that. And it could be just like taking out an eye or taking off a hand. It can be just as emotionally distressing, just as painful as that. But if something is causing us to sin, we need to remove it from our lives. It's better to not have that. It's better not to have that job, good paying job. It's better not to have that job and go to heaven than continue with that good pay and continue in sin, because that's what that job calls for. Continue to lie to clients, or continue to steal from whatever. I don't know what all is out there, but that it is best to do away with those things. And if not, well, the world has supplied what it can supply, and you've gained nothing by it. Nothing at all. A little bit of comfort here, but it's kind of cold comfort. A little bit of comfort here, and then it's gone entirely. Now let's go back to chapter 7, and we'll look at the solution in this, because Christ gives us the solution. Verse 33. What should we be doing if we're not to be worrying about these things, having no anxiety about those things? Concern, plan, sure. But don't let it just be the giant in our life. Verse 33. But seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness. That's what we're to be after. Not after the material stuff. God will supply that. That's going to come around. But seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things shall be added to you. Do you believe Christ or not? Because I can tell you right now, just as we had demonstrated, just as we had illustrated earlier, it's easy to see that in others and can be difficult to see it in ourselves. And because we have emotion in the game, it is our life that is going to be tried. And yes, believing that Christ will take care of us. When He's asked us to do something, such as what we just read in chapter 5, something causing us to sin, we be rid of it. Even though it is very useful at this moment, be rid of it. Do we believe Christ that He will in fact take care of us? Because I can tell you right now, that's what He's saying. That's precisely what He's saying. Do we have faith in Him? Do we have faith? And this is all part of it, believing what He says. Verse 34, therefore do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about its own things. Sufficient for the day is its own trouble. We can be caught up in worrying about every minute thing, but what good will it be? Just our heart being taken by it, our mind being just drowning in it. But what good is it? And here we have, seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness. That's what we do. There's the solution in it all. And it may seem just the absolute opposite. Well, it is the absolute opposite of what the world would say. It's the complete opposite of what the world would tell us to do. But Christ tells us He'll take care of us. He's going to do it. And it may not be in the form that we think. And as we say, we can want a lot of things, but God is not here to give us everything we want. He's not here to give us everything we want. He's here to give us what we need. That's what He's here to do. And that's what He does, to give us what we need. Our essentials will be taken care of by Him if we seek His kingdom and His righteousness. We ask this morning that we look at our own lives, and make the correction that needs to be corrected, and understand the things that need to be done, and that do we believe Christ or not? If we do, we just let go with the worry. That doesn't mean have we're going to have just a carefree life. It doesn't mean that at all, because even Christ had cares. But it does mean we'll have strength and plenty of it through every difficulty. We ask this morning, if you need prayers of the congregation, if we can help you in any way, if you need questions answered, if there's anything we can do for you, we ask that you come as we stand and sing.